Running Sentences presents The Drawn Out Fight, Part 7, Capital City. The capital city is their next stop, and Vass finds himself uncomfortable with the way things are here. The investigation moves on, though, despite his wariness of all things. This is a work of fiction. It is inspired by the manga Tree Gut. There are several similarities between the two, but I have made a lot of differences as well. If you wish to classify this as fan fiction, that might be what it's best named as. Story written and narrated by Michael Hunnery. Copyright 2022, Michael Hunnery. All rights reserved. The paved road filled with other vehicles made for slow going for the third straight day of driving. The capital city of Starborne was now in sight, and sprawled out in all directions in front of them. It was quite the sight even from the back of the vehicle where Vass sat. He didn't like this one bit, though, because people made him uncomfortable, at least being around a lot of them, and here he would be stuck in exactly that. Their car kept its slow, steady pace, and he figured they'd arrive by the evening at the actual city proper with a few of the big buildings around them. But maybe not. The city limits were about as far as they got before turning off the well-paved road. Traffic was still snarled up, and they found a small motel to hunker down in for the night. It was mostly full already, so they split the rooms between the four of them. Mary and Ori took one, with Vass getting stuck with Fred in the other. In the bedroom, Vass sat on the cot, which barely felt like it had much of a mattress left to it. This was a place that saw a lot of people come through, and because of that, things like the bed weren't in great shape. He stared down at it before putting his attention on Fred, who lay on his bed across from him. "Your leg seems to be fine now." Yes, that's a curse I picked up from your brother. He did something to me, and now, after a few days, my wounds seem to heal up. I don't know how or what he did to me, but I remember seeing plants. Lots of plants, and then wounds disappearing." Vass grimaced to himself. He knew exactly what was going on. Well, not exactly, but a good idea that his brother was giving himself over to nature to do things for it. Sounds like something he would do. "And what about you? Weren't you hit many times during that fight? Yet you seem to be fine. Are you like your brother, or are you only brothers because you grew up together?" "I'm fine because my body says I'm fine from that fight. I don't really understand it, but it is. That's just the way I am. As for why that happens, I don't really know." "And you are brothers, are you not?" "A little of both, I guess. I don't remember being born or anything like that. I don't think many people do, but I remember us as kids, but we were never close to one another. We still grew up around each other, but that's because of where we were, not really relationship-wise." "Oh, you do mean up in a spaceship out in the stuff beyond the sky, so to speak." "So you have talked to my brother about the past then, haven't you?" Vass had stiffened on his bed and looked uncomfortable at the fact that somebody knew something about him that he'd not said to anyone at any point in his life. "Yes, I have. I learned a lot from him, and I got a lot done to me by him. Not all of it was nice, nor did I want it to happen, but he gave me an offer and I had a chance, and I would get to live if I did some work for him, so here I am." Rapier stood by his window in his office looking out over Red City. The swirl of red sand was making its way through the street as a sandstorm strolled through. He sighed at the pitiful sight of a few people trying to get by, to get to nearby buildings to avoid the worst of this wind and sand that looked to be picking up quite a bit. Why are you here, and why all of this effort to stop me? Do you not understand that it is a good thing to do this? We stop them, these insects, from spreading in this beautiful planet." The wind howled in its response to his words to himself. Rapier turned away as things outside became hard to see. He looked about his office, the paperwork on his desk, and the contracts for Governor Perky. Getting the right people into position to help this man out wasn't easy. The damned government made sure of that, not wanting to move to make life easy for anyone. The door to his office opened quietly, and in poked the head of Gorm, which he regarded sourly. How had this servant managed to stay alive and survive for so long so far? "What is it?"
"The good doctor would like to see you, sir. Says that it is important."
"Which doctor? I know plenty of them, and I make sure that none of them are good, since good people rarely help matters. Don't stand there gawping at me, you fool. Tell me what's going on so that I can handle the situation as need be."
Cold, sir. He's down in the sub-basement. He has some news about some things."
"You can't tell me the news that he has to report?"
"He didn't tell me what he had, I fear, and you didn't want me to tell you incomplete information, so, I figured the best plan was to then bring you to him, or him to you, and then you could know what's going on instead of me acting as an intermediary."
"Why didn't you bring him to me, then?"
Well, he can help with the loss of dolls lately, and, you needed to activate some, and, well, it seemed as good a time as any to get some work done and combine work, if you went to him down in the sub-basement, and he did come to you, sort of. Right?"
Rapier narrowed his eyes, studying his little worker. There was a reason he was still in one piece, wiggling his way out of trouble for things. Well, it would be fun to see how long he would survive for at the very least. With that thought, he began heading towards Gorm. "As you wish. Let us go down to the terrible sub-basement and get some work done." Gorm scrambled out of the room and didn't even bother holding the door open for his boss. Rapier raised an eyebrow at this, as the door closed before he could get to it. If Gorm was trying to stay alive, then things were certainly going downhill for him quickly, if the door didn't open up for him by the time he reached it. A steady pace took Rapier right to the door, and he was forced to open it for himself. A long walk about the house brought them all the way down to the sub-basement. It was merely a room stretched out as far as it could go without bothering the neighbors. Even then, some space was stolen away to fit all of Rapier's needs. They strolled out onto a balcony that looked out on this room, and the long room where the dolls were all lined up and being worked on by various creatures running about the space. Dr. Cold was leaning against a railing to the balcony out onto this site below them. "Mr. Cold, do you have a report for me?" The doc pulled himself up, standing, and turned to face Rapier with a smile. A look that didn't suit him, but Rapier let it pass, since he was a tool that helped him out from time to time. "Oh, your brother has killed the Cyclone Twins, and, well, sort of anyway. He also eliminated several from Black Rock, and I fear our lost town might have also lost its doll and its ability to feed." "How?" "From what I can tell, shooting them mostly, then crushing the crystals inside that you have some power over, apparently. And you haven't told me how any of that works, so I can't give you an exact answer now, can I, Mr. Rapier?" "I won't explain it to the likes of you, since you will go blab about it. And from the sound of it, I need to protect myself much better, since someone knows about me and is talking. I don't need my plans revealed." "As you want it to be, sir. But at this rate, if you won't let us help us, then you will soon be running out of these." Dr. Cold waved his hand towards the lifeless dolls that were all staring to the ground below. Dr. Cold, I will take your life before I tell you my intricate plans, but I do have something I wish for you to do if you're interested in it. To deal with your brother, I suppose? No, the government, specifically Mr. Perky and his wife. The governor of this little district of nothingness is a problem. They need to be made examples of, if you don't mind, and maybe that will loosen up the government around here. Dr. Cole took a few steps towards Rapier and merely looked him over. What do I get in return for this little job? Your freedom from me? Is that good enough for you? Or are you after more this time? Rapier would lean in towards Cold, tried to meet him eye for eye, but the glare eventually made the doctor look away. Fine, that's fine. It'll be a deal. The small square building that made up the town hall of Starborne stood in front of Vass, Ori, Mary, and Fred. It was a grey building that rose 2 stories, which was odd since all of the buildings around here were very much taller than it. In there should be the records department where we can find some help. Okay, but why do we need to go in there, Fred? Well, Miss Ori, if we want to find Georgina, then we need to look here first. I know you said a little bit last night about her, but who is she again? Fred began heading up the stairs to the front door, where plenty of people were coming and going from. She survived and gained her freedom from your brother. I met her once, but when I went to talk to her again after a while, she had vanished. I know she's in the area, and that she likes to keep records up to date, but she does like to move about a lot. Why would she do that? Well, Mary, I believe she doesn't think she can run from Rapier, so there's no reason to hide, but just to feel safe, I suppose, she hides. Mary clambered up the steps after him, getting right up to his side. Then why would you say that she has gained her freedom from Rapier? Well, it's rather complicated. The man seems to have connections everywhere, so you can't really escape him, and those connections have connections, and connections are on to connections, so you can't really get away from him, and if you try, he just finds you. Does that include Vass? Ori as well had come up to Fred, rushing up the stairs. The man looked back down on him, standing there looking uncomfortable at the bottom. That would be a better question for him, don't you think? Ori turned to look back at Vass as he ran his hand through his hair, trying not to look nervous. Well, Mr. Vass, does that include you? To my knowledge, no, but it could. And why are you down there, by the way? If you want to get away from this crowd, then why aren't you up here with us? It would get you away from them. He looked to Mary and then began to climb up after them, though taking his time to do so, since there were still a lot of people around. It isn't long to be uncomfortable around people, okay? Well, can you give us a reason for it, then? Vass shifted his gaze back towards Ori as he approached. Okay, the last time I was around a lot of people, my brother showed up and killed a lot of them, slaughtering them with his own hands, from what I could tell. The group, which was now near the top of the stairs, all stopped and stared. The comment had also drawn looks from strangers around them, who began to murmur. Vass, though, kept his slow but steady pace, trying to look around for his brother in the crowd. When was this? Several years ago at the big city event. You know, the one where you arrested me that led to my arrest. He joined them at the top of the stairs as they all looked rather uncomfortable with this news. It wasn't what they had been expecting, but what had they expected? He shook his head at them and moved past them towards the door. Whatever it was, it certainly wasn't as ugly as the life he'd been leading so far. The lobby was a busy place filled with activity and people trying to get elsewhere and not be caught in an office lobby. The little group found themselves directed to a nearby help desk with a strict and exact-looking person behind it. Every move from this one seemed to have a purpose for this helpful person, and nothing could be out of line without being corrected by them.
"Good morning. What help can I help you with today?"
"We are looking for someone."
"I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Perhaps you might try the police? They deal with missing people."
"I am the police."
"Oh, great. The person beside you is a police officer. Seek their help, not mine."
This lady sat back and waited for them to leave, which they did not do. To this, she gave them a strange look and questioned why they were still standing in front of her. Vass looked back to make sure that they weren't blocking anyone else, and there was no one else around. Well, there was a crowd blurring through the area, but no actual line behind them that he could see. We are looking for the records of a person who lives in town, we hope."
"Why didn't you say that originally?"
"You assumed the meaning of my statement and drew the conclusion that suited you, Miss Help Desk person." Mary began to pull Fred off to the side before he got angry, as his face was getting a bit red.
"I did no such thing."
It's fine, that's fine. If you could direct us to the department that has information, records, and so on and so forth, please." The help desk lady had her face twitch a bit, which ruined her perfect image, as everything about her seemed to shift to anger.
"The basement? Follow the signs."
The hiss of words were more than enough to send them heading off that way. It helped that this lady also pointed off towards the door in the corner, and so they would all rush that way. No one around them in this crowded room seemed eager to go near this door, which had the sign for basement carved into it. Their little group made their way towards it, and Vass kept his eyes looking about the space for his brother. There were no signs of him, but he didn't feel safe at all. The other three were actively ignoring him at this point, as they rushed to make sure that Fred got away before he said anything further to this help desk lady. They were through the door and headed down a set of stairs by the time that Vass got up to the door himself. He did one last scan of the room, with the feeling that he was being watched, which made him uncomfortable, but he couldn't place where it was coming from. So he, too, went through the door. A small, cramped room in the corner of the basement was where all of the records of the city were kept. A shocking feat, since this was a town of thousands of people, probably in the tens of thousands, all contained in a room that was about 7 filing cabinets, long and wide. "All right, we're down here, Fred. What are we looking for? I know you said her name, but it kind of flew out of my mind when we were busy trying to get you out of trouble." "Georgina Pact, the Countess of the former city of Rolling Weeds." "And how is she connected to Rapier other than she worked for him or was forced to? What's going on with him? Or what's going on with her?" Fred shrugged and moved towards the filing cabinet, looking for something to occupy himself with. "I am not completely aware of how or why and how. Just that I heard stories about her and I had a talk with her." "You sought her out. Why did you do that?" Fred had pulled open a cabinet and was beginning looking through a file. "Oh, I wanted revenge, and who better to help a person who wants revenge than one who's managed to get away in the first place. She refused to help me, though." Ori had also begun to move towards the filing cabinets, though not really sure what she was looking for. She just glanced at the exterior of the one nearest to her. "What are we expecting to learn from her exactly?" "Oh, a way to get to him, a weakness, or some way to get at him. She told me she had none of that, though, so I guess it didn't really matter." "And after all that, you kept working for him, helping him out?" Not directly, no. I think he figured me out and kept me at a distance. Work was sent through mail along with threats and so on. I did what I was told to do, and I get to keep my life, which was good.
What were the threats?
I'd rather not talk about those.
He now had his hand deep in one cabinet pulling out some files, and a second later was shuffling through them to see what they contained.
If you three don't mind, there's a whole lot of cabinets here. Despite it being a small room, it might take us a while to find someone by her name, or we might find many people by that name. So, if we could, it would be appreciated if we could get searching, please. They did as requested, going about and beginning the search for whatever they could find. Vass had several files soon in his hand and opened them to peer them over. Most were names of people and few facts about them. Other files contained more information like location, taxes paid, relationships, and connections with the town. None of the ones he had looked over, though, contained the name Georgina Pact. He dug deep into the files and kept going, but had no luck through several cabinets that he had assigned himself. At one point he did stop and listened, staring up the ceiling, as he thought he heard something up there, but whatever it was soon gone. I found nothing on my end.
Did you do a thorough search?
Yeah, Mary, I looked over all the files in the cabinets that I had. I didn't see anything, and I need some fresh air, so if none of you mind, I will step outside. He moved to the door, but slowly, in case of any complaints that were going to come his way. None did, and he was soon out the door, leaving. Vass was still not feeling very comfortable and had rushed his way to the stairs to get out of the basement, and got all the way up the door that would lead him to the lobby. The handle was in his hand, and he twisted and turned it under his grasp. The door did not move. He pulled and pushed on it, with little results, as it would not budge. Panic shot through him as he rattled at the door, not wanting to be in a closed space with little light. With a final shove, though, the door managed to pop open, but it only pushed in a few inches. Then a bit more, but it felt like something was on the other side, trying to keep it shut. He got it open enough to squeeze past and into the lobby, and then stopped dead. The sight before him of what had once been a busy lobby was quiet, and nary a sight of a single person was around. He glanced about to see what had stopped the door from opening, and found that a chair had been lodged under the handle. Vass felt himself tense up, trying to feel the air for anything that was off, despite the fact that everything already felt off. Is this the work of a doll, or is that you, Rapier? His voice echoed around the empty lobby and came back to him. He swiveled back around to look down the stairs, and even poked his head through the doorway to make sure that no strange noises were coming from down there. Peace and quiet came back to him. Vass backed away from the door, looking all about for any signs of anything that would just help him out. "Come out, I want to fight you." Nothing came back to him aside from his own voice once again. He would move towards the exit of the town hall, the echoing of his steps keeping him company. There was a worry that something had happened to his associates downstairs. They could also handle themselves. The townspeople, though? If Rapier showed up with a few dolls, what would happen then? "You want to fight me, right, doll? You want to kill me and take my head back to Rapier. Now's the perfect chance to do so. I won't even resist." There was still no response, and now he was at the door to leave. His breath was ragged as his stomach churned a bit. Fear of seeing an awful sight flooding his imagination if he were to step outside. So he closed his eyes, turned the handle, and stepped out. The air was cool out here, and he didn't want to open his eyes for a second. His intention was to listen for life, listening for the signs of humanity going about its day like nothing was going on. This was reverberating around him loudly. Every little noise seemed attracted to him, so he opened his eyes to try and shut out some of the noise and figure out what was going on. Life out here was going about its business, with people moving here and there. He watched for a minute to see if there was anything different. It didn't take long for him to notice that no one was approaching the building anymore or trying to go up these stairs into the town hall. He glanced upward to the sky to see the afternoon sun still sitting there where it should be. Time hadn't gone much by since they'd been here, so was this Rapier's doing? Was this just some sort of great lunch rush, or this town like to take off after a certain time, a siesta maybe? He kept bouncing questions about his mind, murmuring them to himself as he reached for the door handle to go back inside. His friends were still in there, and they might need him. And so far there was nothing he could do out here in the moment, since it all looked okay. Back inside, he paused for a second, looking about the quiet lobby again. He half expected it to come to life, or show some signs of what had happened here. Noise, if there was any, seemed to be dead, which reminded him all too much of the time his brother had wiped out a town. This had all the hallmarks of that event, but two great missing things. Bodies and blood. Vass found himself moving towards the door to the basement, hoping that things were okay down there. He realized he could explore further about this place and see other rooms on this floor or maybe upstairs. But it didn't feel right to do at the moment, especially if his friends were in danger. In a clatter of footsteps, he reached the bottom of the stairs and tried to stop himself. He was making an awful racket of noise, which was enough to cause the far door to open, and Vass froze and looked over at the sound, expecting the worst to happen. Mary's head poked out, looking concerned at what was going on, but relaxed when she saw it was just him. "What are you doing?" Things have gotten a bit weird out there." "What do you mean?" He hurried over, fearing that his whispered shout wouldn't be enough to be heard, or that someone would hear it that wasn't intended for it. "Everyone in the lobby isn't there anymore." She cocked an eyebrow at him as he waved his hands animatedly around himself and then just tried to go inside the room. When he realized what he was doing, he pulled him down, but the concern on her face was noted. "What do you mean?" "I said what I meant. There isn't a living creature up in the lobby anymore. Outside is fine, but in here there is nothing. There's no one. It worries me because this is like when I last ran into my brother." She looked surprised and then glanced about the hallway to see if anything was off and if they were alone. He was the only one there, and she grabbed him, pulling him inside the room. He didn't fight it and willingly went in, though still looking about himself as well to feel a little bit more safe. Every nerve in him, though, was screaming that something was terribly off here, but nothing was telling him exactly what and or why it was that way. Inside was a flurry of files that had been placed all about the place as Ori was helping Fred as they were looking over a couple, as Mary closed the door behind them. "Let's try this again. What is happening up there?" "It should be busy since it is the afternoon, right? Everybody likes to go places in the afternoon. But there's no one there." "I've only been here once. It was during the afternoon, and it was packed with people all over the place. What do you mean? What is going on, Vass?" Fred yelled this over without looking up from his search, but Ori did cast a glance over at them. "So people should be up there, however, no one is. Outside is normal. Did it get through this time? I don't know how many more times I can repeat the same thing and have it sound different." Ori now had more concern creasing her face. She came over to them holding a file and stopped. "And your brother appeared last time this kind of thing happened?" He nodded yes to Mary, and the concern grew between the two women who stood there looking to one another. They seemed unsure of what to do next. "Found her, finally." "Great, but we probably can't leave." "Nonsense. Your brother, or whatever, is probably trying to scare you into Going away, or set someone to do the job for him. You know him as well as anyone. He doesn't do anything for himself. That's where you're wrong, Fred. He will and can do things if it suits him. I told you, he helped wipe out a city. He did it with the Cyclone twins. Well, we can't stay here, can we, Vass? Mary's right, we have to go. We have our information, so let's move as a group and watch out for anything. We're better as a group than we are alone. Fred came over, shaking his head and reaching for the door handle as he walked past them. There is no need for all the drama. Rapier has his dolls do all his work for him. We've handled one, surely we can handle more. Come on already. Fred stepped out of the room, leaving the three standing in there, looking to one another. Mary offered a smile, trying to be reassuring, as she and Ori stepped out, leaving Vass alone for a second. With a deep breath, he, too, stepped outside. The quiet lobby awaited them as Vass caught up to his friends. They all stood outside the door to the basement, staring out at the emptiness before them. Should we explore and see things, or head straight for the exit? We have what we came for, Mary, and this is probably all illusion of some sort, to get us to stay or something. We should just go. Mary and Ori looked to Vass, who kept his eyes looking upward towards the second story. There was a small balcony that ringed an area up there, and then further up, to a dome of a window above that. To Vass, this was where he expected to see a doll or his brother, but neither was making an appearance, and he couldn't stop staring. Vass? Sorry, things just feel off. Nothing is happening and it feels off. We can go if you guys want. Good. Finally, some sense comes from him. Let us go. Come on, Ori. Fred stomped his way towards the door, with none of the others following him right away. Mary and Ori were both still trained on Vass, who nodded, but this did not ease their concerned looks. Are you sure? It's fine, Mary, and thank you for your concern, but we should go see this lady if she can help us. It seems a more direct route to my brother than waiting around here for things to happen to us. I don't really want things happening to us. That's a good point, Mary. Waiting for things to happen to us is never a good plan. Vass already took a few steps forward, which made the two ladies move as they stared at one another for a moment more. Noted, Ori, but I will say you were concerned a moment ago and didn't move as well. Natural instinct of a tracker. Take in the environment before moving. Know where danger might come from. Basic stuff. Don't you two start fighting with one another. If my brother or his dolls are around here, we need to be careful. And I do not want to see any more death, either from you two. If we can help it, please. Sorry. There was a pause before Ori joined in. Sorry. Well, let's not dwell on it, and let's just get out of here before something does happen. With hurried steps, the trio practically ran after Fred. Outside, things began to feel normal again as Fred led them through a variety of roads and streets, with each getting narrower the further they went into them. They were also dirtier, with fewer people around, and just grungy and not as friendly, none of which made Vass comfortable since it felt more and more like territory where a doll might occupy. His brother, not so much, but there was a chance, and he did not want to risk it that something might happen. So he kept his head swiveling about as he tried to keep an eye on all things around them. There was nothing out of the ordinary, though, as they went deeper into the city. Instead of actually going deeper into the city, though, they wound up approaching the outskirts of town, where the buildings faded to houses and then more or less faded from houses to huts. Fred kept track of where they were going and brought them to a stop in front of a house among many huts. It was not a place that looked like it had seen a good day in a long while. According to the records, this is the place, and it gives me that familiar aura of when I found her before. A good sign. Does it look like the place you originally went, Fred? Or different? Or I'm not getting any horror off of any of this. I'm not weird like you are, so to me it looks like a plain old house that needs a lot of love and care. Not exactly the same, no, but that doesn't matter, Mary. Let's go see if she's home, unless one of you has some sort of worry that this is going to go all wrong. Fred cast a glance about them, waiting for them to speak up. There was an uneasy silence, as the trio kept looking about for some signs of things to come. Vass especially kept looking about. Well, you three, can we go knock on the door or not? There was no wait for an answer, as Fred stepped up to where the door was and gave a firm knock on it. The sound from the knock was a rather hollow one, like the interior of this place might be empty. That drew Vass's attention as he looked over, worried that things were terribly wrong. Fred, you're 100% sure that this feels the same? Yes, mostly. Why? Because to me, this feels like a trap. Someone should go around back and see if there are windows or doors. Get a sight line inside. There are no windows out here, there's just this door. Oh, you're just imagining things. But with a shake of his head, Vass was already moving around the side of the house. The back of the house was not hard to get to, though the sandy ground around here kept trying to trap his feet. Vass managed his way to see the back of this place, which was an empty wall with nary a door or window. He went the full length of it to make sure, and then around the other side, but found no windows to be had. He came back around, shaking his head no at the trio still standing there waiting for a response at the front door. A few people were wandering by on the road nearby, and so Vass went over towards them, holding up an arm to try and draw their attention, and managed to get one of them to slow to a stop as he approached them. Excuse me, apologies for interrupting your day. It's what you want. Do you happen to know the resident of this house? Vass pointed towards the house that he meant, but wasn't sure it was necessary for him to point towards it. No, well, sort of. I've seen a person come in and out of it, but not talk to them ever. They're weird looking, and I don't have time to do with that. Thank you. Have you seen them lately? My friend knocked on the door, and there was no response. Seen her? But not in the past few days. That's all I know. Leave me alone. The person scrambled away with a glare as he turned back towards his friend. She may or may not be in there. What do you guys want to do? Well, as a police officer, I think the only right thing to do is go in and investigate. I'm with Mary. Knock down the door and let's get in there. Maybe something has happened to her and she needs help. Us standing around here is doing no good. Now you're all about attacking things. You three keep swinging between emotions and feelings and making it hard to keep up with. But fine. Fred struck at the door with a kick from his foot, making a soft thud noise against it, but offered no noticeable change. Get out of the way if that's all you can do, Fred. She and Ori stepped up, giving the door a hefty kick, which splintered it and buckled it away from the lock. Another 2 kicks sent the door inward and gave them some sight into the dark interior of the building. They spilled into the space beyond the door. What looked like it could have once been a living room if they could really see it. There was a couch there, but the space seemed otherwise empty of any signs of life. Hello, Georgina Pact, are you in here? Fred had already moved past towards what looked to be a hallway from what they could see, leading deeper into this darker place. Come on, this looks exactly like I remember it. This is how you remember her place. Yes, Ori, it's no big deal, looks exactly right to me. Ori and Mary gave the man odd looks as he went into the darkness, which swallowed him up. I don't trust this. Me neither, but there isn't anything here, so, Mary, shall we follow? You don't have to if you don't want to. As he moved to get past them, in this last second, Ori put her hand out to stop him. I don't think that is a wise idea. A growl of a noise greeted them a second later, followed by Fred running back into their sight. "I lied. It isn't the same."
"What is it, then?"
"Couldn't see. Saw teeth. Sharp things reflecting off of some weird light. Didn't chance it." He bumbled into them, trying to get out of the house, but only achieved knocking a lot of them over. The growl grew louder as they all went over. A tangle of arms and legs splayed all about the place, on the ground, with each trying to get up and out of the way. "What are you lying about? Why did you get in my way?"
"You didn't give us much of a chance to react, did you, Fred?"
"This is not my fault, Mary. You're cops or rangers or whatever you're always in the way. You should always be prepared for things to go badly. How have you gotten caught so far off guard?" This was followed by quiet as they got untangled and rose up from their spot on the ground. Vass was one of the first to his feet and looked hard at the dark hallway space. Doll or no doll, whatever was in there, needed to be dealt with. He slipped past the others as they were getting up. Vass would stumble into a door as he reached about in front of himself to feel for where he was going, since it was so dark and he could barely see. The door was the first thing he'd come across down here, and he reached for the handle since it did not open when he bumped into it. He hoped he hadn't walked past whatever that figure that was making the growling noise, as he found the handle and twisted it a few times before it would open. This room he found himself in had an odd glow to it as he stood before a decrepit-looking figure of an old woman. She held several gems in her hand and looked up when he came in. The light that was coming from this room did appear to be coming from the gems themselves.
"You've come to take me away."
"No, I came for some information on my brother."
"It is but the same thing. Your brother is in town, by the way. You've already seen it."
"I haven't seen it. I can feel it. But see it? No, I don't think so."
"Don't pretend you didn't see it, even if it wasn't much."
"Where is he, then?"
"Try the governor."
Her hand closed around some of the gems, crushing them, plunging them into darkness. He wanted to say something more, but a growl of a noise cut him off. End of Part 7 of the drawn-out fight. Thank you for listening.